Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you have found the time for me and my ramblings. Welcome back to another episode of Only Dead Fish Go the Flow. As usual, please follow the podcast wherever you listen to it. And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave a comment and/or review. Without further ado, welcome to your weekly reminder that Only Dead Fish Go the Flow. This week, I am sat down with global health and women's wellness specialist of Time of the Month, Victoria Fytche-Crossman. Welcome to the podcast. We've had a few little setbacks in getting our schedules, but we are here and we are ready to go. So welcome, Vic, because it's not really a Victoria, is it? It's a Vic.
It's not, yeah, unless you're my mum and I've done something wrong, we'll go with Vic. Yeah, but no, thank you for having me. Yeah, there's been a few setbacks, but that's real life, I guess.
Absolutely. Sometimes you just got to roll with the punches and just make do with what you can, don't you?
I know. And do you know what, though? It works out perfect. So I'm going to talk about something later on within the podcast as well around stress, obviously something that we all experience. And I feel like understanding a little bit more about stress has actually lined me up perfectly to deal with them situations a little bit better. So hopefully I've got some real life examples as well that I can share with everyone.
Before we get into the time of the month, TOTM. I keep reading it as like Tom, you know, the little gadgets.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's not, it's TOTM. Before we get into that, the theme of the podcast is women in sport. And originally when I reached out to you guys, I'd seen the tampon petition stuff that's been on LinkedIn, but I didn't actually realise, but you are a former football player for Leeds United. So would you sort of like to name and explain your sport, as that is normally how I find people? So it was quite nice to find out that you actually did do sport as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So exactly as you mentioned, so now I'm health and education lead at TOTM, which is Time of the Month. But in my past life, so especially kind of within my early 20s, I played quite competitively for Leeds United. So the sport was obviously football. And I guess I played competitive sport, mainly football, from kind of like the age of 12 onwards. But I did stop playing around the age of 22, 23. I was really trying to rack my brains as to when I actually stopped. I'm 31 now, so it was a while ago. And I'm sure we'll delve into it within this podcast, but there was a few reasons why I stopped playing so early. I've still got friends similar age to me now, even older, that are still playing fairly competitively. But yeah, my sport was football, and I'm not a Leeds United fan, but I did used to play for Leeds United, and I was there in total for about 4 seasons, so I did quite a good stint there.
I don't know loads about football, but what position did you play?
So I played centre midfield. So if that still means nothing to you, picture me as being in the middle of the football pitch. I'd do a little bit of defending, a little bit of attacking. I wasn't really a goal scorer. I was just kind of the person that would run as many yards as possible within a game and try and support those people that would score.
Fantastic. How did you get into football?
Yeah, so I think to start with how I got into the sport, I'll probably blame my older siblings. So I'm one of 5. I'm the youngest. So I've got 2 older brothers, 2 older sisters. They all did a huge range of sports themselves. So like my sisters were really competitive swimmers. That's never been one of my strengths. And then my brothers used to play things like cricket, rugby, football, and I dabbled in all of them, especially when I was younger. There's only 18 months age gap between me and one of my brothers. And I kind of got dragged along to a lot of the training sessions he would go to. And then I just slowly started to pick up interest really in all of those sports. So I played cricket for quite a long time. I played for county when I was much younger. And then, you know, no hate to cricket players out there or cricket fans. It was just far too slow for me. So whether that was batting, fielding, bowling, it was just far too slow. I needed something that was a bit more kind of upbeat and lots more going on.
I have to tell my dad to turn the podcast off at this point because he's a cricketer and a cricket fan.
I mean, do you know what? It's great to go and watch when the sun's shining and you can sit there with a drink, but actually playing it just wasn't for me, especially when I was so young. I was kind of like 11, 12 when I was playing cricket. So I stopped playing cricket when I was about 11 or 12. And around the same time, I was actually playing for a boys' sports team. So both at school and then also just grassroots.
Mm.
And I actually got invited to go to Grimsby Town Academy trials, which is where I'm originally from. So it was kind of like the first girls' team that I'd heard of in the area because, especially back then, there wasn't much like conversations and there wasn't much talk about girls' football clubs. So that was all brand new to me. And the minute I went and I kind of played within a group of other girls and I got to know them and it was very similar ability and it was all just much more familiar to me being around obviously a group of girls. I kind of never stopped playing and then I was able to go from Grimsby Town to Lincoln City Academy, which is where I spent the majority of my early playing career. So I played for Lincoln Academy from probably 13 right through to 18. I then went to Notts County and then eventually I went to Leeds United. So definitely family that got me involved in the sports. But then what actually kept me involved in the sports was probably like the group of girls that you meet along the way and obviously playing with some people who challenge you, but also playing with people who are actually better than you so that you can learn from them as well was really, really good and helpful for me.
Yeah, I sort of listening to that because I'm the eldest of four. So I've
Okay.
got two younger brothers and a younger sister. And actually, funny enough, I always joke that I got into the sport to find a tall boyfriend because I'm very tall. And like rowing, you've got to be very tall. But my younger brother had actually started doing it. So I went
Hmm.
because I went to like one of his training sessions and I was like, oh, this looks like good crack, and beforehand I'd really done like netball where you just spin in goal keep because it's like stick your
Yeah.
arms out and hope for the best, or like cross country running because it's like, oh well, you look like you could go for a long time. Hated it,
Did
absolutely
you? Yeah.
hated it.
Yeah, that's the thing, I think especially because we do get into sports at such a young age, there's got to be like an enjoyment factor there as well. You could be built perfectly for a specific sport, but if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to perform at your best. You're not going to want to stick it out because I think,
Mm.
when we do things in the long term, a lot of it is because we're passionate about it. We enjoy it. We enjoy the people that we're around. So I think, yeah, definitely for me, it has been just because I enjoyed it so much. And then, as I mentioned, sadly, I stopped playing quite early on, and that was just due to injuries, really. Yeah.
When you don't get to stop on your own accord, it niggles away at you, doesn't it? It just sort
Very
of,
frustrating. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because you've always still got that what if kind of mindset as well around if that
Hmm.
hadn't stopped you, what else could have been. So, yeah, it's definitely like a mental battle when you do get stopped. You do have to stop because of, injuries or illnesses, definitely.
Yeah. Would you tell us about the best and the worst parts of football?
So if I go with the worst part to start with, because I think I've already kind of mentioned it anyway, for me it would just be injuries. I think, some people are more prone to being injured and getting injured than others. I've got friends that have played the sport as long as I did and continue to play it to this day, and they've never really had like a serious injury or something that's really knocked them back.
Mm.
Sadly for me, I was not one of those players. I think I was built to get injured.
You're like watching your friends sail past, like
Yeah.
having the best time from the
Yeah,
bench, like,
honestly,
oh.
I couldn't tell you how many times I was like in and out of A&E getting x-rays for the exact same reason. I mean, a lot of the time it always ended up being ankle ligaments. There was a few stress fractures along the way within the ankles, but it was always my ankles that were quite obviously a weak spot for me when playing. Whether it was just that I'd be injured myself from simply running and then going over on an ankle, whether it would be a tackle, there would always be something that just caused an injury. And it got to the point for me where it just wasn't enjoyable anymore because obviously I'm talking when I was in my early 20s, um, pay, especially so some players didn't get paid at all. Some
Uh-huh.
players like myself just got paid expenses, which really literally just covered expenses, and that was all. Some players did get paid a little bit better if they'd maybe come down from a WSL club or something like that, and that was obviously to entice them to play. But obviously, when you're not getting paid and it's not covering your bills, your
Mm.
prime focus is your full time job. And for me, I was a personal trainer at the time, and I always remember after most games, I'd spend 2 or 3 days hobbling around the gym, not being able to do what I could do with my clients. Therefore, it's impacting my business because, as a lot of people know, personal trainers are self-employed. So there was just starting to be like quite a negative ripple effect that was impacting not only how I felt and my ankle strength, but like other areas of my life as well. So for me, definitely, worst part of sport would be getting injured, because even if it's a one-off injury and you break your leg or something like that, it really sets you back for a period of time. And that's not
Mm.
only physically, it's mentally as well for a lot of players, because if you're going into a contact sport where it's 50-50 for a tackle, I can guarantee for a lot of people who have been injured and injured their leg or anything like that, you're probably going to pull out of the majority of those challenges moving forwards, because you don't want that injury to occur again. So yeah, definitely worst part of sport for me would be injuries.
It's also quite a mental thing when you're going in for like tackles and things like that. Like if you've got it niggling at the back of your mind, like you might not commit to it as much, and then you might get even more injured, because it's like
Absolutely.
you've got to
Yeah.
commit to it to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? That's probably happened for myself a number of times, when going back after thinking you've rested enough and you've done enough rehab on the injury, going back into a game, being put in front of, for example, a 50-50 challenge, or even just putting your foot through the ball as what you normally would at the same speed, the same strength, etc. If you don't do that because psychologically something's stopping you from doing it, which is probably the worry of the injury occurring again or the pain occurring again, the amount of times that I probably did that and then got injured off the back of it is just,
Mm.
it's a losing battle, I think. Once you've started in that cycle, it can be really, really difficult to break out of. And I mean, for a lot of sports teams now, especially the ones who are competitively in the championship and the WSL for female football, they've got that support, they've got the proper rehabilitation now, so that when they do step foot on the pitch, they know that they're 100%. Whereas back, when I was playing, you've got no kind of data or tests to tell you whether you're actually fit to play. It's just kind of based off how you feel.
Yeah, it's like a wet paper towel and an ice pack. And
Yeah.
out of 10, what
Yeah.
do you rate this?
Yeah. Rest, put your feet up for a week, and then you should be good for the game
You
next
should
week.
be
Like,
good
you
to
just
go.
don't know. Yeah.
Also, was sort of laughing at you say about the expenses. It's like, what's that, like half a tank of petrol, a
I
wrap,
was
and
gonna
a Diet
say,
Coke?
yeah. It's nothing at all. It definitely, especially for me. So at the time when I was playing for Leeds United, especially for two of the seasons, I was at university in Lincoln. So my expenses were supposedly covering the travel from Lincoln to Leeds, which is about 90 miles, an hour and a half journey there and back. And I can tell you now, it didn't cover it.
It did not.
Yeah.
What would you say are your best parts?
The best part is definitely being in a team environment and just building the bonds that you build. So I think I was quite fortunate in the sense that my playing career, I spent a lot of the time at Lincoln United Academy. So literally from being about 13 right through to 18. A lot of the players hadn't changed in that time. So I've got some brilliant friends still from that time
Mm.
playing the game so young. And then again at Leeds United, I said I've spent about 4 seasons there, I think it was. And I've kind of got two groups of friends at the minute. So I've got my uni friends, and then I've got another group, which is just the girls that I met through football. And a lot of them were from either Leeds United, some of them were even from clubs that we'd just played against. And then actually, because whilst you're all rivals on the pitch, you might end up in the same bars or anything like that. So you get good friends with them. So definitely some of the bonds that you make. I mean, for me, I've got groups of friends that, came to my wedding that I chat to most days. And we're probably coming up to about 10, 11 years of friendship now, which is great. And that started literally from kicking a ball together and ending up on the same football team as each other. So yeah, 100% the friendships that you make and the bonds that come with it.
I think because I'm 29, I'm going to be 30 in October. So when you're saying some of the friends that you've made, a lot of the friends that I made through my sport at university, we're coming up to like 10, 11 years now
Yeah,
as well. So we're kind of in that same bracket.
yeah,
And me and my husband got married last summer, and we had like so many different friends from the sport, and like some of them had been, you know, rivals or whatever, like
Yeah,
rivals on the
yeah.
water, and then they're all there at the wedding and taking up loads of space and blocking all the light out.
That's the thing though, and it is really nice because like you're so used to being friends with them in a isolated situation where like you celebrate your wins after a game. But actually then when you have really built the bonds, it ends up celebrating things like your wedding day, like you just mentioned. And a lot of my friends have just had children as well. And it's like those, you don't expect that ever at the time of playing the sport, that, you know, this is what it might look like 10, 11 years down the line. But obviously when it does look like that, it's definitely, you know, the injuries were all worth it because of things that have come off the back of it. The good side of sport, definitely.
It's so lovely. I couldn't agree more. Do you have a football sporting ick, or you could do like a time of the month, you know, something that the brand would consider an ick?
So I would say, so I could give you definitely a personal ick, and then I'll think of a TOTM ick. So I would say a personal ick when I'm kind of thinking in the mentality of like the sporting world. I think for me, it would be smelly players, right? So I understand that when you come to the end of a game, you've been running around for 90 minutes, you might have got a sweat on, you might be a bit smelly. That's absolutely fine. I'm not talking about that. But there's no need 5 minutes into a game for somebody to already be smelling when I'm having to be in such close proximity of them. So I would definitely say that would be one of my icks. And then also a personal ick would be the smell of football boots. That's one thing that I will never think I want to get that smell back in my life, because it's awful. Yeah, especially when you leave them in the boot of your car, you're not getting your car back smelling how you want it to smell. So they would be my
Never.
personal icks. I think from a TOTM perspective, especially when it comes to like sporting and thinking about our products and what we kind of believe in, obviously we're a sustainable period care brand. So all of the products we create are 100% organic cotton. You can wear them for almost light intensity activities or real high intensity activities, so sporting situations. And I don't know if it's much of an ick, but more of a we wish people knew more about it, is that we still know, especially younger girls, that they feel like they can't take part in sports because it's that time of the month, and they feel like that, you know, they've not got suitable products that are useful for them because they maybe feel like they just can't participate in sport while being on their period. And that's one thing that I think for us, we would love to almost break through that barrier. Awareness piece, I guess, just to be like, do you know what? You know, you can still do what you would normally do every single day of the week, regardless of how high intensity it is or what location you need to be in or what environment you're in. You just need that like education piece around. There are products available that are almost like sturdy enough and absorbent enough for you to do what you want to do, and that they don't need to pause and take time off different times of the month.
I think that is definitely an ick. That, you know,
Yeah.
that there is the ick is, I guess, the thought process that you can't do it. And
Yeah.
also I've seen, I'm not sure, I think I'm now getting TOTM targeted ads on like my Instagram, because
Are
I've
you?
obviously
That
been
doesn't
like talking
surprise
to,
me. Yeah, it's the
and
algorithms.
it is the algorithms. And I think I saw one of the ads that if you sign up to like their subscription service or your subscription service, then you get chocolate with your order.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah,
I
that's it. We're trapping people.
You will. You've trapped me. I think I was going to sign up before this call, but I had to do something else. I track my period on my phone on an app, which is like a moon app. So
Yeah.
it's not like your typical period tracking app, because it shows you what phase the moon is in like
Okay, that's
with
interesting.
your period cycle. And I found it so, I don't know, I just sometimes like to lean into like the witchy side of things.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and then I'm like, oh my God, it's a full moon and I'm on my period. It's like a blood moon, like something crazy is about to go down right now. So yeah, I'm due at the weekend. So I was wondering whether or not if I signed up for a subscription, it would arrive by the weekend and I have chocolate and tampons in one fell swoop.
Look, if it does, then that's just a winner. So you can
That's
only give
very
it a
true.
go.
Yeah, that's very true. So our dying on the hill is things Things We Wish We Knew, led by Vic, Hormone Edition.
Perfect. So, as I've mentioned, that this might be a slightly different angle from what some other guests that have been on the podcast have spoken about. But obviously, I work as health and education lead at TOTM, so I am a women's health practitioner. And I think something that I wish I knew more about, and I mentioned when I was younger, but actually, what I probably mean by that is, yeah, when I was younger, but also like early 20s, mid 20s, even just a few years ago, because we
You're
know
like,
that,
actually, right now.
yeah, right now would be great to know more about it. But I feel like if I knew more about my own hormones, how they maybe present themselves, what they actually mean, what's actually happening within my body, then I feel like I would be in a much better position to perform at my optimum. And when I say perform at my optimum, that could be in a sporting situation, it could be at work, it could be at home, showing up and being able to be the best version of myself for my partner, my friends, my family, etc. And I feel like for especially a lot of people listening, like all we really want to do is be able to perform at our optimum. Surely, I know that that's something I strive towards. And again, it's not always work related. Sometimes it is more personal related as well.
Sometimes you want to just feel your optimum, not even
That's
performing
it.
your optimum. You just want
Yeah,
to feel good.
yeah, that's it. And do you know what though? It's so simple to feel
Mm.
good. Obviously, there's things, external factors that are out of our control, things that might happen that do make us feel down, that are negative things that happen in life, and they're out of our control. But actually, when there isn't necessarily anything bad happening, it's so easy just to feel like you're at your optimum and to feel happy. But actually, what we need to do is really understand our hormones a little bit more. And I actually made a note because I think there are 4 hormones that I wish that I know a lot about now, but I've had to kind of spend a lot of time studying them. But previously, if I'd have known more about it, there's definitely times I'd have handled situations better, I'd have been able to perform better, I'd have felt happier. So the first hormone for me is cortisol. So a lot of people will know about cortisol because it's our stress hormone. But
Mm.
essentially, when we are feeling like we're experiencing danger, when we feel under threat, sometimes it can be a positive. So you might have a bit of adrenaline, you might feel under pressure, you might have multiple demands. That can actually be positive. But sometimes we'll get pushed past like our pressure threshold. So the pressure threshold, anything underneath that, I just say is kind of our comfort zone. If you go way too below underneath that, that's kind of like your boredom zone. So that can be quite dangerous in itself. So you need to find a bit of a sweet spot. But when you get pushed past your pressure threshold, you'll probably feel it yourself because it might be that you start to sweat, your hands might start to feel clammy, you might feel like your heart beating out your chest, you might start to become a little bit distracted. So you might start to notice things like your cognitive function decreases and things like that. There'll be signs that you can pick up on for yourself. But when we do get pushed past that pressure threshold and we've now got all of these symptoms coming into the play as well, we'll start to notice that things like our hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, are much higher. And actually, in our bodies, all that's done is activate something called the sympathetic nervous system, which brings on this reaction of either fight, flight, or in some cases, for some people, it's freeze, where you can't
Mm.
really do too much. And I think even just understanding how that works for yourself, what brings on your stress, understanding what's happening inside your body, and then importantly, what can you do about it to make you feel better in that moment has really, for me, helped within certain situations where I do feel quite overwhelmed. I do feel quite stressed, mainly just because I understand a bit more about it. So for anybody who finds themselves in a stressful situation, you now know that you've activated that sympathetic nervous system. All your body wants you to do is activate the opposite, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is, I always remember it as our relax and de stress, but it's linked to your rest and digest. But basically, all your body's asking you to do is find something that you find a little bit more relaxing because your blood pressure will be higher, your heart rate will be higher. So you might just think, well, what can I do that's going to bring my heart rate back to normal? What can I do that's maybe going to lower my blood pressure reading? And that doesn't need to be anything wild. It could just be that you literally sit down with a glass of water, your favorite book, put a song on that you like, and you do some simple breathing practices. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Um, so I definitely think understanding stress and the hormones that come with it would have been really helpful, especially when you are growing up and there's loads of different contributing factors that you can feel quite overwhelmed by. I think that
Mm.
would be nice for people just to understand a little bit more about that.
2024, I think, I was really struggling with my my rheumatoid arthritis symptoms. And my body was in like this constant state of stress. And one of the symptoms that I had was my throat really closed up to the point where I couldn't swallow. So I'd be like driving to work and I couldn't swallow without like warm water. And it would,
Right.
this physical thing would then trigger me to become more and more stressed that something was really, really wrong.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things that I did was went to a yoga session, and I can't remember what type of yoga it was, but it was a dark room with a red sort of
Mhm.
tinge to the light, and
Sounds
all
nice.
yeah, it was really nice. All that happened during the yoga session was you were put into positions with bolsters, and then you just breathed for like 5 minutes.
Yep,
But it was the feeling of being made to feel safe or relaxed and
that's
whatever. And
exactly it. Yeah.
yeah, and it was, I kind of advanced, if you like, to go to a yoga session specifically for it. But it was all about like calming the nervous system and like reassuring your body that the stress, even though it was sort of like in my head, the body itself was safe and I could like come back to this safe space
Yeah.
twice a week or whatever it was when after
Yeah.
work. But it did make a real difference. And like, I remember the first session being like, this is not going to touch whatever is going on with me personally. And then by the end of, 6 sessions, I was like falling asleep in a class of like 8 strangers.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah.
oh shit, who is that snoring?
Yeah, but you know what though? That just goes to show like that when we talk about like activating the parasympathetic nervous system, it sounds so in depth. It's really not. You just need to find something for you that literally makes you feel relaxed, de-stressed, gives you the space to decompress and digest whatever it is that you're feeling and experiencing. And that's all it is. And for you, like you mentioned, that could be the yoga class. For me, it's just a bath and some peace and quiet by myself. Like that is what I love. That really helps me. For other people, it could be really intense sport activities that actually is their output. And again, that's absolutely fine. But I think, yeah, everybody just needs to know that one thing because we know that so many people are stressed. I'm sure there are people that experience stress every single day, but maybe don't have the understanding as to why they're stressed, what it's doing internally for them, and what they can do to support themselves. And actually, it's so simple. And I think it starts even just by conversations like this, sharing what works for you, sharing what works for me. Because I do think we always try and overcomplicate the solution or the
Mm,
fix. And we don't need to do that. And exactly as you mentioned as well, like a lot of these, we talk about stress and it is a psychological impact, but it's such a physical impact as well. So you mentioned that you felt like you couldn't swallow properly. For me, when I experience quite high stress, it would show up in eczema on my eyelids. So then you
okay.
can imagine like the knock-on effect. You're on video calls, you're going outside, you've got eczema on your eyelids. Like there's
Mm.
so much more then that you've got to kind of deal with.
And everyone's like,
Um,
"Oh, what's wrong? Have you noticed?"
yeah,
And then you're like, "Oh my God,
yeah,
everyone can see it's getting
yeah,
worse and worse." And it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
this horrible spiral.
Yeah, yeah, and to be fair though, that leads them really nicely because what into the next hormone that I want to talk about, which is melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, because that as well is one thing for me. I mean, I know we can't live without sleep anyway, but
Mm.
I cannot live without sleep. Like it is one of my favorite things. Um, but that is so important, We know that when we're stressed, we don't always get the best quality sleep that we want. When we've got things going on, it might not even be stress, it could just be room temperature, it could be when you last drank caffeine, it could be what you've eaten for your evening meal that can interrupt our quality of sleep. It could be alcohol. But yeah, for me especially, it was sleep that really helped activate that relax and de-stress and almost, it gives you energy for the next day. It makes you feel more prepared. But obviously, one thing with the hormone, so melatonin, is that there are so many things that can act as a barrier for melatonin to not be produced as high as what we would like towards the evening. So melatonin is typically just known as our sleepy hormone. So thankfully for us, especially in the UK, we've got daylight and we've got darkness. And our bodies, that's our body's circadian rhythm. So we know it's daylight outside, we should be awake, we should be having energy and doing our day-to-day things. When it gets darker outside, melatonin starts to kicks in because our circadian rhythm is telling us that it's starting to become evening, and that's normally when the body will wind down and it will go to sleep. So melatonin will naturally start to produce itself, especially for those who do have a really good circadian rhythm. But there are certain things that are blockers. So hate to say it, I probably shouldn't be having a coffee at coming up to 3 p.m. in the afternoon, because that might be a blocker. Because caffeine has like a half-life for adults of about 7 hours, meaning it might take 14 hours for this cup of caffeine to be completely out my system. So that's going to be like an interferer for melatonin being produced.
I have strict coffee rules. So
Do you?
I have one at what is it? I have one at about 10:30, and then I can have another one if I want to, but it has to be before 3 o'clock. So I'm just looking at the inside of my cup, and at the last 20 minutes, I'm just like, and after those, so before 10:30, like before breakfast, if I have a coffee too early, I feel like I have heart palpitation and be very sweaty, because I feel like, I guess, cortisol levels will
That's
be
exactly
up
right.
for the whole day. And then if it's after 3 o'clock, then I won't sleep well. So I'm the perfect example for this.
There you go. Yeah, you are the perfect example.
I was going to say, is another factor screen time?
Absolutely. So obviously we've got screens, but it's more so the blue light that sits behind the screens. So there are so many things that we can do. You know, on smartphones now, you can put like the warmer LED screens on. You can download certain things from apps that make the blue light as reduced as possible. You can buy the glasses off Amazon, which are the blue light glasses, which kind of block that out. So there are things that we can do, especially if you do, you know, work on your computers and your laptops or your phones late into the evening. But you're absolutely right that even like watching TV and the blue light that sits behind that, looking at iPads, even whether it's that you read a book on an iPad, you do things on your laptop without these protective screens on. Same thing. All that's doing is increasing cortisol, reducing melatonin, because the two can't actually work together. If they do, that's then when you'll find you lay in bed, you're really tired, like mentally exhausted, but you're wired. And that's because melatonin's high, but cortisol's high as well. So, you know, you're not going to get a good quality sleep. There are, you know, without going into it in too much detail, we've got 4 different stages of sleep, literally stage 1 through to 4. Stages 3 and 4 are our deepest stages of sleep. So one's known as dreamer's sleep. So that's when you're, you know, real in a deep sleep. Chances are you're going to be dreaming within that phase. It's a lovely place to be in. We don't spend very long though within that stage. I think it's something like 8% on average per night. Stage 3 is a good place to be. So stage 3 is like where your body and your mind will start to repair and restore. So that's a good place to be. But again, we only spend about 15% of our night within stage 3. Then the majority of our sleep is in stage 2. So I think we spend about 55% of our night within stage 2. Still a really positive place to be. You are asleep. You're still getting all the benefits that you need from it. But it just means that you will wake up within. So if I kind of picture it as like a bit of a graph, you fall asleep, you go into stage 1, you spend a short period of time there before dropping into stage 2. The second half of the night tends to almost work as like a heartbeat graph, where you're dropping into stage 3, coming back to stage 2, maybe dropping into stage 4, coming back to stage 2, stage 3, etc. What we want to do is really get ourselves into a really good sleeping routine where, yes, we're dropping in and out of some of the deeper stages of sleep, but just as our alarm's about to go off, we've been in stage 2 for quite a while, we're sneaking up to stage 1 anyway, and then our alarm goes off. So we're not being woken up by an alarm once we're in our deepest stage of sleep, because that's when you're going to wake up really groggy. And actually, for people who do go to sleep and wake up with a hangover because they've maybe been drinking the night before, that's what happens. And that's why you feel so rough when you wake up the next day, because you've been in your deepest stage of sleep, but you've been woken up quite abruptly out of that deep stage of sleep. Your body's not had the time to kind of come out of that stage and slowly pass through to stage 2, stage 1 before being awake.
There's literally nothing worse than waking up abruptly from a hangover or waking up in that like deep sleep and then suddenly you're just sweating. You're like, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah.
What day is it?
And just the last two, but I'll cover these together. So obviously work that I do at TOTM, time of the month, is all around the menstrual cycle. And whilst I've studied women's health for probably on and off the last 8 years, but more in detail the last kind of 2 to 3 years, I actually didn't realize until a couple years ago just how much of an impact estrogen and progesterone have throughout the different stages of our cycle. So, just really quickly, we've got 4 stages throughout our menstrual cycle. So, we've got the period, which is known as the follicular stage 1. We've then got the later follicular stage, we've got ovulation, and then we've got the luteal phase. And lots is happening throughout these different changes, more than what I'm going to mention. But just looking at estrogen and progesterone, when we are, for example, in the first stage of the follicular stage, which is known as the period, estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest. So I'm sure listeners can probably relate to that they might feel like they've got less energy throughout the period. They maybe feel a little bit more frustrated. Their patience is a little bit lower. They feel like they can't concentrate for as long. They don't feel as motivated. And generally, we just feel pretty crappy sometimes throughout the period. That's completely normal. And a lot of that is controlled because estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest. Now, the good news is that that period of time doesn't last too long. And obviously, we slowly come out of the period before we go into the second stage of the follicular phase. This is where estrogen and progesterone start to rise again. And if you just picture it, that when estrogen and progesterone start to rise, so does things like our energy, our motivation, how optimistic we feel, how confident we might feel in ourselves. We might feel like we want to be more extroverted, whereas at the start of that month, you maybe want to be a little bit more introverted. So we start to notice a lot of these real positive changes, and that is predominantly controlled by estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen and progesterone are at their highest towards the later stage of the follicular phase, during ovulation, and also probably day 1 and 2 of the luteal phase. It'll dramatically start to drop again towards the end of the luteal phase because the body's just preparing itself for that period again. But this is again where playing sports, going to work, wanting to perform at my optimum, if I understood this and how these hormones fluctuate throughout different stages of the month and different stages of the cycle, we could really use those to our advantage. So, a little while ago, I used to go to the gym probably 5 days a week, and I'd have different sessions to do on different days. Some were harder and definitely required more energy, more time, more strength than others. And instead of me perhaps changing what days of the week I would do certain sessions on or what time of the month I would do certain sessions on, I would just kind of follow a structure that a personal trainer had set me. And actually, when I do go back to go into the gym after I've knocked these babies out, I will really be quite structured with when I do certain exercises based off how I'm feeling, what kind of cycle I'm in, and how much load that session requires of me. And you can then think about this at other times as well, when, like, again, just taking it back to a sporting opportunity, when you play a game, you maybe don't have the best game that you wanted, you don't perform as well because you were lacking energy, you maybe started to cramp a little bit quicker than you normally would. All these things, again, like, you might not beat yourself up as much knowing that it's because of the hormone fluctuations and changes that are happening within your body. But I do think that's something we just forget about, and we don't spend enough time focusing on. Whereas actually, if we do understand all of these hormones, they vary from person to person. So you'd need to understand how that impacts you, how it presents itself in you. We can really use them to our advantage. And again, that can be in a sporting setting, a work setting, or a personal setting.
It's so interesting, like the menstrual cycle conversation with like high performance sport, because for years everyone sort of talks about it but nobody has an answer. And I remember like going to some talks about the menstrual cycle when I was maybe 21, and I was doing like an under 23 world championships or something. I like went with my notepad and paper and I was like, what are the answers? What's going to fix this sort
Yeah.
of thing? And I guess the answer is like, you need to understand what's going on in your body so that like mentally you don't panic or you don't overthink. And it's in obviously other cases where it's like endometriosis or, you know, there's other things at play, but just like, I guess there's no standard period, but for a standard period, if you like, it's just having the knowledge, being aware of it, and, you know, taking precautions or like making adjustments within your training and performance. And it's not to say that you can't, it's just to say that might feel different.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to be really proactive and strategic with
mm,
what the next few days or weeks look like from a training or work perspective.
mm,
Absolutely. And I think that you know, quite positively, I think, especially within the last 12 to 18 months, especially within like women's sports, it is being looked at much more closely, which is a real positive because
mm.
it definitely wasn't, you know, years ago. Um,
There definitely wasn't much out there other than like, here's
yeah,
a paracetamol and a tampon, get on with it.
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, even some conversations weren't taking place. So I do think that there are, you know, like S&C coaches, performance coaches that have got roles now in businesses, but also sports clubs that can really support girls and women through some of the questions that they've got because
Mm,
you know, it can make such a big difference, and it is just a case of understanding your own hormones, and not everyone's going to have the answers for you. You know, hopefully people have heard of those four hormones now, and they might go and do their own little bit of research about it and really just sit and think, do you know what, like, this is how stress presents itself in me, this is how I feel the first few days after my period. Now I know that that's the second phase of my follicular phase. I should have more energy. I should have this. So it's just kind of that small awareness piece. But then, yeah, you're going to have to do a little bit of research to make it really bespoke and specific to you and your body.
mm. I can give a really good example to that. Just quickly, that I woke up yesterday morning and my my joints were like really stiff. And I was like, oh God, what's going on now? Blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, not quite catastrophizing, but, you know, going in some sort of negative spiral. And then, as I said, my trusty Moon app, I was like, oh, I wonder where I am in my cycle at the moment. Because in my head, I was like, oh, it's 20th of April. So I'm not quite at the end of the month. And I have been like 1st of March, you know, that's when
Yeah.
it's been. Anyway, I looked on my app, which I've been using for years now. So it's reasonably predictable. And I was like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
on Friday, I'm supposed to come on. That'll be why I'm like struggling more today, because I have learned that that is what can affect me in my, you know, day-to-day body. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, it's just that. And I just get on with my day. I was
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
stop catastrophizing, stop panicking, stop anything.
Yeah,
Just be like,
and
oh,
obviously
well.
we live in a world now where we've got all these apps that we can rely on, and you mentioned there that you've been using yours for a few years, so that is probably extremely accurate to you.
Mm,
Same thing for some people who maybe listen to this conversation and decide to download an app. Just make sure that you're actually using that app daily for at least 3 months. So submit your symptoms, submit how you feel, but do it for a 3-month period at a minimum, because that's then when it's going to really tailor it to you. Um, so yeah, you know, we've got all these apps and all these resources at our fingertips. We do actually need to be using them.
yeah.
You
Spoiler,
know,
you need to use them.
yeah, we do. Yeah, because they are brilliant. And like you mentioned, you know, you said you were feeling you know, you were feeling like certain, you were experiencing certain challenges and stuff the other day. And if you hadn't have seen that on your app, you'd have probably spiraled and thought of loads of different reasons that it could be. So it
Mm,
can really just save some of that panic that you know, especially in some of those like negative thoughts that might have come along after it.
mm. It is almost like problem shared, problem solved sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you like ask a friend and they're like, oh yeah, that happened to me as well. And you're like, oh, okay, that's fine then. One of the things I did want to pick your brain on, and I think feeds into our dying on the hill, is the tampon petition, which is how I actually originally found Time of the Month on LinkedIn. Was a lot of people sort of wearing T-shirts that said, this T-shirt has been through more, regulation testing than a tampon. So
Yeah,
would you sort of be happy to chat us through that?
absolutely. So TOTM we led the petition for safer tampons. And just to give a bit of context behind the petition and why we even started it. So we've got our brand, which is, for example, 100% organic cotton period care. And then we've got what we would class as like the mainstream brands. So potentially your cheaper products that contain lots of plastics. And it's not only the plastic, which is like the thing that we need to worry about from an environmental perspective, but from a women's health perspective, there are articles and studies that have taken place to show that actually in some of these mainstream products, they are finding ingredients like or chemicals, things like glyphosate, which is essentially weed killer. Fragrances are being used within the products to make them smell nicer. Bleach is being used within the products to make them kind of whiter than white. And when you hear about it and you just think about where people are placing these items, so whether
Mm.
it's a pad or a tampon, bearing in mind a tampon that's internally inserted, it's used in such a highly absorbent part of the body. Anything that we absorb internally through the vagina goes straight into the bloodstream because it doesn't bypass the liver. Therefore, nothing gets kind of broken down and no waste is removed. Can be really dangerous. And there are lots of studies as well taking part in the background at the minute around, well, what does it actually mean for women's health? So, glyphosate, which is essentially weed killer, what's that actually doing to a woman's body? Doesn't take a genius to work out
I
that
was
it's
going to
probably
say,
not doing great things.
spoiler alert, it's bad.
Yeah, yeah, but obviously, we've not got these studies back yet to actually present it as black and white. So we know that there needed to be a change, and that's obviously where the petition came from to make tampons safer. Now, at TOTM, we do all third-party testing. We're GOT certified, which is the Global Organic Textile Standards, which means our products are extremely safe. They contain zero chemicals, zero toxins, zero plastics, zero nasties. So these are products that we want to be putting in our body, obviously at the times that we need them. Um, so we launched the petition just for some of these brands who aren't going through safety testing measures, who aren't necessarily having women's health at the forefront of their minds, to make sure that there has to be some kind of safety testing regulation standards that they need to adhere to. The petition, it's closed now, but we did reach 17,000 signatures, which is brilliant. So it's meant that we've had a formal response from the government. That response has been quite positive, that they are going to look into obviously making sure that safety testing standards are much higher, and there needs to be at least the basic testing standards in place. So that's really positive, and that'll just be conversations that we continue to have moving forwards to make sure that, you know, period products are made as safe as possible for the consumers that are actually using it.
I just was laughing to myself so much when you were talking about, some of these products aren't necessarily they're female focused, as in it's a product made for women, but they're not being made with women in mind. I'm like thinking of some of the packaging that I've seen, and like flip it over and it's like the only kind of warning on there is like, don't flush it down the loo because you'll kill the dolphins.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just like, there's no
yeah,
like, oh, this might not be safe for your vagina. There's just like, be careful of the dolphins because that
yeah.
is a safety hazard for turtles and dolphins.
Yeah, yeah. And do you know what though? You've made a perfect point there around certain things around like on the packaging label. You read a label and you get really nothing from it unless
Mm.
you're reading the TOTM one because we're really transparent about around our products. And that is one of the movements that we want to make. We want to make sure that actually packaging has to be much more accurate. It has to be much more transparent. That almost you have to put your ingredients on the packaging label because I know as a consumer, if I'm in the supermarket picking up a couple of different brands, one's telling me it contains nothing but water and sunshine to make the product, and one's telling me it's got bleach, glyphosate, weed killer, fragrances, dyes in it. I know which one I'm choosing. But as a
Mm.
consumer, in a supermarket where I'm not reading anything on a label because it doesn't need to be on there, I'm not able to make an informed decision. And I don't think that's fair on the end consumers. So again, that's one of the reasons why we've kind of called upon the government to make sure that these safety standards are much higher.
When I saw it on LinkedIn, it was so grabbing. And I've heard like my mum obviously been like, oh, don't use that, blah, 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 because it's
Yeah.
bad for you. And you're like, oh, shut up, mum, it'll be fine. And then suddenly you're like seeing, because there was a billboard or a lorry or there was a
Yeah,
few
that's right.
different
Around
sort of,
London. Yeah.
yeah, parts. And it was like this vehicle's gone through greater greater testing or like regulations in order to be on the street than your tampon has. And I was
Yeah.
just like, that is actually right. Now I do need to sort my menstrual products out.
Yeah. But I mean,
You've got me.
that's the marketing team though that do such a good job at actually like putting across, yes, the important message, but putting it across in a way where people actually remember it. So we had a van that was driving around London, going to all like the monumental spots. It had a timer on the side which was counting up the minutes, the seconds, the hours, etc. That period products haven't had a safe regulation against them, and it was equivalent to something like 100 years, but it was in kind of days, hours, minutes, etc. So loads of people were taking pictures. Obviously, we were taking pictures, and it's stuff like that that gets the message across, but in such a memorable and fun way. Because whilst periods aren't the most fun topic to talk about, it can be something that is made a little bit more fun by like the marketing team and all of their ideas as well.
Well, kudos to them. It was clever because it was like shocking in a way of like, oh shit, something needs to be done. But it wasn't like scary as in you're like, I'm never going to use a tampon again.
Yeah. And that's it. Yeah, we still need to use the products. We just need to use the right ones.
They
Yeah.
just need to be smarter. Do you have a Vic mantra that you'd be happy to share with the podcast?
I don't. So I don't. I don't know if it's a mantra or not, but one thing that I just always love saying, either to myself or to other people, is if you put your mind to something, you can achieve anything. So I don't know if that's a mantra, but that is something which I like to live each day by, especially when I've had a group of friends that have just recently done the Paris Marathon. And it's one thing I kept saying to them. I was like, it's not physical, it's all mental. If you put your mind
Yeah.
to it, you can achieve it. It was riling some of them up the wrong way because it's definitely physical to run all of those miles. But it's so true. A lot of things are like a mental game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that fits in really well with the theme of the podcast, which is kind of, I guess, knowledge is power almost has been the
Yeah.
general theme of our chat. My final question before I must let you go is, do you have a soundtrack for the week that you are happy to share?
So a soundtrack for every week for me would be the song Dancing in the Moonlight by Top Loader. Feel
Good
like that's a
choice.
good upbeat song. Everyone knows it. So yeah, I'd definitely say, Top Loader, Dancing in the Moonlight.
That is an excellent choice. That will be going on to the Only Dead Fish podcast playlist. Well, that is everything. So thank you so much for coming on, Vic. And we did it. We managed to make it work.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
You're very welcome. Oh, that was one thing I was going to say. If anyone wants to find you or find you online, where is the best place to find you?
Probably if you can send it to my LinkedIn, that'd be great.
Preferably LinkedIn. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
Lovely.
very much, Vic, and good luck with the rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks. Speak to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Only Dead Fish Go with the Flow. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on TikTok. We also do have a website where we are selling the Only Dead Fish tin fish t-shirt. That's a bit of a mouthful. So if you would like to buy one, that would be absolutely fantastic. I hope you really enjoyed the episode, and we'll speak again next week. Bye bye.